Hi, my name is Mark Zehr, Republican candidate for Charlotte County Tax Collector. There are three positive changes I'd like to bring to the Office of Tax Collector. The first is to decrease the budget of the office by a minimum of 20%. The second is to improve customer service, which I think we deserve. And the third is to increase transparency and accountability to where it makes it easier for you and other taxpayers to hold myself and anybody that comes after me more accountable for the job that's being done in that office. Why is that important? Well, over the course of the past 20 years, and yes, I did say the past 20 years, our current tax collector has pushed the budget of the office up to almost $6 million. What does that mean to us, though? Well, what it should mean is that it's time to look at some other counties and see what they're providing services for. So I studied the offices of the three counties closest in population to ours when I ran back in 2012. Those offices were Santa Rosa, Bay, and Hernando counties. At that time, we were outspending those offices by 45 to 110%. Did you hear that? 45 to 110%. That's huge. With those same three counties today, we are outspending them by 55 to 122%. Theirs have been growing, their budgets have been growing incrementally. Ours have been growing astronomically. In fact, the highest of those other budgets back in 2012 was $3.4 million. Ours at the time was $4.9 million. So I was talking about reducing the budget of our office by a minimum of $1 million per year. Where would that leave us? That would leave us spending $500,000 more than the highest of those other three comparable counties. Now, Santa Rosa is a little bit smaller, but Bay and Hernando counties are a little bit larger. Santa Rosa County has a higher median income by a substantial amount than what we have. So why are we, as a poorer county, spending more money to provide the same level of services? But the newspaper excoriated me for cherry picking my numbers because I chose the three counties that had closest population to ours. And I heard arguments from the tax collector's office that, well, we know that it's not the population that we need to compare it to. We know it's the number of parcels. So I cited a county that had triple the population and 30% more parcels that had a lower budget than we have. So the argument then shifted to, well, we know for a fact that it is not the population, that it's the number of transactions, because we perform far more transactions than these other counties do. That was refuted by bringing up the fact that we have a remittance processor. You've never heard of a remittance processor, and frankly, before I ran last time, I hadn't either. But I studied it and found out that a remittance processor is a machine, and we had one at the time, that will take trays of envelopes where people sit down at the kitchen table and write their checks and put the remittance tab in the checks in the envelopes and mail them into the tax collector. So these trays of envelopes that arrive are put in the remittance processor. And I didn't know what all bells and whistles our particular remittance processor had, but I did know that it did a lot of these functions, where a remittance processor typically will take those envelopes and open them, take out the check and the remittance tab, separate the two, validate the check, deposit the check in the bank, and then go ahead and process that transaction to where one person running a remittance processor could handle anywhere from 450,000 to 2 million transactions a year. Well, needless to say that the current tax collector stared down at the table when I brought that up, because she didn't know that I was aware of that. Now, I said that we used to have a remittance processor, but in fact, that remittance processor is now gone and it's been replaced with some high-speed scanners that perform many of the same functions, and we have more of them. So the next argument that came out was, well, the budget is so high because we cross-train our employees, and it is so much more expensive when you cross-train employees. Well, I know from private sector business that when you cross-train employees, it costs less in personnel costs because a person from one section of the office can be pulled over to a busy spot to help fill in when there's a busy time. And in fact, we don't see that happening in the Charlotte County Tax Collector's Office. We never see the tax collector or one of the deputies or one of the supervisors or one of the assistant supervisors setting in and filling in at one of the seats. If it was me, I would do it. I would do whatever it takes because I believe in strong customer service. So let's go back to the budget for a bit. Why is our budget so high? Again, if we look at personnel figures, I had actually contacted Peggy Brannon up in Bay County, and she sent me a list of all the employees that are in her office and how much each one of them makes. And when we paired those off with people in the Charlotte County Tax Collector's Office, we had a pretty good match, except we had stacks of exempt employees right in the middle that didn't even exist. Those positions did not exist up in Bay County. Now, Bay County is running 4 office locations, and I think they have 52 employees. We have 69 employees. You can do the math. 17 employees, many of whom are exempt employees, meaning they don't punch a time clock. They go in when they want to, they leave when they want to, and there's no real monitoring of when they're there and when they're not. How else can you explain the fact that in Bay County, a bigger county than we are, both geographically, they have about 30% more land mass than what we have here in Charlotte County. They have about 4% larger population, and their median household income is about 7% higher than ours. To run their tax collectors' offices, the 4 of them, not the 3, the 4 of them, they're spending about $2.9 million a year. We're spending $4.9 million a year. Why does it cost $4.9 million a year here in Charlotte County, a slightly smaller, slightly poorer county, than what it costs to provide those same services in that larger county of Bay County? I know why it is. It's because of a bloated personnel at the top. We're running a management pyramid that looks like this instead of like this. So where are those people? Well, we know that there are several people, including the tax collector, the 2 deputy tax collectors, and 1 other person in the office, who actually resigned from their positions. So you may ask yourself, resigned? If they resigned, what are they doing there? Well, again, remember, when I ran back in 2012, I was the first person in 16 years to run against the tax collector. That meant that when she ran in 2008, she was unopposed. 2 weeks after the general election, she sent her resignation letter to then Governor Crist. Charlie Crist. You remember him. Yeah, I do too. Charlie Crist accepted that resignation. So by stepping away from the office for the month of December, she was able to receive her full pension from that job, her full a cash payout of $306,708, and then came back in January to receive that $80,000+ a year pension on top of her salary. So what happened with that is that the deputy tax collectors knew about that. In fact, in her resignation letter, she assigned the responsibilities of the office over to one of the deputy tax collectors. It was a busy time in Charlie Crist's life, and they knew that at that time that he wouldn't take time to appoint another tax collector. So that in January, the tax collector could come back and get sworn back into her new term of office. So in 2010, 2 years later, she had to reciprocate and allow those deputies who had covered for her to do the same thing. So now we have the 3 highest paid people in the office receiving their full pension and their full pay at the same time. My plan on reducing the budget of that office is to thank the people who have spent many, many years serving our community. Thank them for their service and encourage them to go home and enjoy their retirement. Well, if they want to keep working, they certainly may, but I think they need to do that out in the private sector. They can either go get a new job in the private sector, or they can create a job like I've done. Now, once those people leave, again, we have 69 employees, so we'll have a little bit fewer employees as this happens, and we can expand responsibilities inside the office. And we know that it can work because the next 5 larger counties are doing just that. If it works for them, they're bigger counties, why can't it work for us? There's no reason. Now, you'll hear excuses. In fact, now the latest argument is that, or the latest excuse I should say, is that, well, we are an agent of the state of Florida. Excuse me? Every county tax collector's office is an agent of the state of Florida and an agent of the Department of Revenue. So, again, that's what they are. They're excuses. Remember that on voting day. When is it? And why is it an important one this year? The primary date is August 30th. And it is extremely important this year because this is the first time in many, many years that people of any party can vote for the county tax collector. Yeah, that's right. If you're an independent, if you're a Democrat, if you're an NPA, it doesn't matter. You still get a voice in who you want to serve you as Charlotte County tax collector. Now, I've asked for people to hold me accountable for the job that I do. I want to go in, I'm not a politician, I'm running on self-imposed term limits of 2 terms. In 2 terms, either I've accomplished the things that I have told the taxpayers that I would do, in which case I don't need to be there anymore because that means that the budget is in line now, the customer service has improved, and it means that there's a greater accountability and transparency. Now, if those are all in place and the structure's in place to hold myself and anybody that comes after me accountable for the job that's being done, I don't need to be there anymore. Now, if I haven't done it, I certainly don't need to be there anymore. In fact, when I was cornered about it, I even said, I'll go beyond that. Where I'm promising a maximum of 2 terms, if I have not significantly improved that office over the course of the first term, I won't even bother running a second term. But I know that I can, and I know I will do a better job. So, I ask 4 things of the people in Charlotte County to make this work. Won't work without it. The first is that I need your trust. The trust is important. If you don't trust me, you're not going to elect me. The second is I need your support because it takes money and it takes the backing of people going out and holding signs and knocking on doors and getting people out to vote for me for Charlotte County Tax Collector. The third thing I ask of you is your vote. Without your vote, I'm not getting into office. I can't make those positive changes. And the fourth thing that you will not hear another candidate bring up is that I ask you to hold me accountable for the job that I do as I serve you for Charlotte County Tax Collector. So, are we a team? Come on board. Love to have you. Thank you.